Welcome to How To. Molly won't be in this video. She is running the camera. Anyways, this video we're going to show you how to make rocks out of insulation foam. I will show you what you need and then we will get to it. Okay, you're going to need pure black paint and 4 different grays. You're going to need 3 different sizes of paint brushes. You will need insulation foam. This is just stuff that I picked up at Home Depot. You will need a base. You could use cardboard. I prefer to use wood. Even though this is a bit thick, it's still strong enough that it will hold up. You'll need sandpaper. This is just a tear off of a larger piece. And you'll need at least 2 different sizes of craft knives. Okay, you'll need paper towels to wipe your brush, and also any mess that you will get, which most likely you will. And just about anything that you can put water in. Definitely will need to wash your brush, and it also can use that to wipe up any mess, which you almost definitely will. Okay, we're going to start out by cutting this piece of foam, which is scrap from something else I made. Always save your scrap. It comes in very handy when you're working. Now, you cut it into what shape you want. I might be able to get several rocks off this piece, but for right now I think I'm going to concentrate on the center piece. It doesn't take long to do this work, mostly because once you get good at it, it just becomes too simple to do. Now I'm using a long blade because this is a thick piece, but for the smaller, I will be switching over to the smaller blade. As you can see, it cuts it through pretty easily. Now, once you get basic shape down, take the sandpaper, soften up those sharp edges. I like to have the little pieces like this from time to time because that right there will make a really interesting part. So don't always sand off all of it. Just try to give it a more smooth, natural, wind-blown look. Rocks have cracks, so if there's a crack in the piece of foam or something like this right along here, that doesn't really make much of a difference because, well, rocks look that way. Okay, this piece is just about ready for glue. I also try to sand down these lower parts right here because if it's sticking out of the ground a little bit, usually the rock is round all the way around. So round off all of the sharp edges because it will not look right if you don't. Okay, there's that piece. Now we take white glue, which the white glue is what I found the best for foam, and you set it on wherever you want it to be. Kind of want that off center. Yeah, that'll work. Now, most rocks are not by themselves in anything. So, take one of the scrap pieces, cut it down, and that one, I actually like the way that looks. I can probably do 5 or 6 of these in an hour. I've been doing this for 10 years now. Don't expect to be able to do that right off the bat. I'm sure that Molly could tell you that, no, you can't do it that fast right off the bat.
Mm-mm.
Take a little bit of glue, put it on the side that you want to put towards the rock. Oh, well, this is going to be a very nice formation when I get done. Usually, they don't turn out this well right off the bat. I have to do a bunch of smaller bits and pieces to be able to get it to look half as good as this is already looking. If you want to see some of the stuff, I will have a link to my earlier page, Understreet Games, which I do mostly this kind of work, which is terrain pieces for miniature gaming. And on there is the bridge and my tree houses, which are favorites amongst many people who have seen them. Oh yeah, I like the way that's looking. What do you think?
That's awesome.
Okay, we need a second big rock. Now, don't think Molly's just watching me do this. She's over there painting miniatures for one of the games we play while we're doing this.
I'm just happy I figured out how to dry brush.
That's something that I will be showing you in the paint section of this video. Dry brushing is majorly important to doing realistic looking anything. You won't see it a lot in our larger models because you don't really need to do it, but on some of our, pretty much all of the smaller stuff, you need to be able to do a pretty good job with dry brushing. How I'm going to get the palette and the piece I'm working on into frame, I have no clue, but we'll figure it out. And a little bit further away. Now this glue, when it dries, it will be as hard as cement because of the way the foam absorbs it. Wood is pretty good about it. Cardboard is the best for a base when you're wanting to just do that, but unfortunately the cardboard does not hold up very well for anything, and your models will come off. I do this for people who do enjoy model trains and whatnot as well, once in a while. And they like the way I work. I've had several want me to teach them how I do it. Unfortunately, it's not something that's incredibly easy to teach. That's why we're doing the videos. That way I can sit here and blabber on and she can edit it out. Although I think she should probably leave that part in. Alright. Well, we will not be doing painting on this piece because this piece will need to dry, and I'm trying to get this video finished all in about an hour period. So don't expect to see this piece done until probably the end of the video. It might just be that it's on one of our Facebook pages, or I'll share it on Twitter or something. Well, that piece is going to be a little bit more interesting than the others. Now, like I said, do not think that you're going to be able to do this as easy as I can, because one, I've been doing it for 10 years and I have a natural eye for this. Most people who have seen me do any of this are going, how are you doing that? And my answer is, I just see it in my head and can copy it. Okay, that's a great piece right there. We will switch to the next piece. Alright, now on to painting. As you can see, I'm using one of the other models. Most of the time you want to use a palette with this, but with rocks in particular, I just basically put it on there. It's not that funny, hon.
The paint's farting. It's funny.
It's an almost empty bottle. What do you expect? Okay. Just make sure that you get it on there thick when you're painting the base color, because if you don't, it won't work into the cracks like you want it to, so you'll end up with the flooring showing up. I can show you on our piece that we will be doing the other stuff. Right there, you can see where the flooring is showing up. And in this, you just make sure you get the area that it has the stones covered, and then from there you paint outward. You don't really want to cover the entire thing while you're working on it. Normally when I'm working on these, I am not on a flat surface, I'm actually holding it in my hand. But that does not work for video taping unless you have a GoPro, which we don't have. Now, this is actually the thing that will take the longest out of all of your painting, because you can't just get done with this and then go straight over to dry brush and gluing. No, this has to sit probably overnight. Same with the gluing. The gluing actually doesn't take that long to harden. Usually that takes 15-20 minutes at the most. But the paint, the black paint base, really needs to dry hard. So you'll want it to sit overnight. Also, like I said before, you want to make sure that there's enough on there that it gets down in all the cracks and everything. And that can lead into problems. Get the water out. Because you'll want to wash off your brush if you have any excess, like I have right now, so you can wipe more off. What are you spazzing about?
Figuring out how to dry brush. Do you know how long it's taken me to figure out how to do it?
Took me 3 months.
I think I've been working on it for... When did I start gaming?
About a year ago.
Yeah, it took me about a year.
Yeah, some painting techniques are not as easy to pick up as others. Although
I haven't been trying as hard.
Well, I saw it once and then started trying to do it. But that's just me. I mean, the many game stores will have seminars and little workshops that'll teach you how to do these things. That's probably going to go by the wayside in some places with these videos coming out, of course. Get this mess cleaned up off the table. Yeah, I'm messy. That's how it works.
You should see my hands after I paint.
Your hand is totally different than the table. I should have put down paper. But it doesn't make any difference. Okay. Now we got that mostly smoothed out. If you have little cracks and stuff, that actually adds to when you put the basing on. If you can see it. I'll get that. And we'll switch to the final model, and I'll do dry brushing and then show you the basing. Okay, now on to the final touches. As you can see, it's another different one. Each of these will be put on the Kickstarter as, I believe we said, $20 donation prize. That will happen with all of the small pieces we do. Now, this is how you do dry brushing. You take it and you put it in the paint, and then you wipe it off. And it allows you to color it. Do hard, soft swipes. You don't do hard like you would with the normal painting. I'm sure there's plenty of you who are familiar with dry brushing, painting miniatures. Don't worry about getting it on the base because it doesn't really make any difference. That's all going to be covered up. Now this is where you're at the home stretch, because when you're doing this, it's drying so quickly that you can just continue on after you get done. Okay, a little bit much there, but that's okay. Just drag it out. That actually will probably work anyways. Do not try to get it in every little crevice that there is, because you want the black to be shown. Like right here, you can see where the black is really showing. The whole point of putting on a base coat is that's the color you want to stand out. I've done sandstone, and that one usually works best with brown. Brown basing. Get that top really good. Now you'll notice that there are 4 different colors. This is pewter gray, which is I use the most. This is normal gray over here. I'm not sure if the camera can see that. Here, let me move that in. That's normal gray. That's dolphin gray, and that's granite gray. This is only slightly lighter than this. In fact, I usually darken a little bit with pewter. But pewter should go, which is a dark gray, should go down first. You want to go darkest to lightest. Unless you're really doing some weird stuff with one of the pinks, and then you want to go with the brightest, lightest pink first, and then work your way up. Lighter colors usually work in the opposite direction of dark colors like grays, red, pure reds, blues. Colors like that. Get these. Yes, I do like a lot of rocks on my bases. because it gives you rough terrain in the games that we play. Warhammer, Hordes, War Machines, even Infinity, and a couple of other games that I can't think of right off the top of my head. And that looks like that's good for pewter. Let's move on to the normal gray, which honestly is probably the color I use the least out of the ones that I get. You can see the difference right off the bat. When you're looking at it in the palette, you can't see as much of a difference. But when you get it onto the rock, that's when it starts looking very different. Also, like I said before, normally I would be holding it in my hand. That's because it's easier to get the light where you need it. You might notice that there are areas that you've missed and you want to go back over and do that. You don't have to, but it adds a lot to the piece if you have a lot of covering, because light will still shadow it no matter what. Now on to the granite gray. That's where you're going to want to switch to a smaller brush. I'm using, well, about the same size, but this one's pointed, and it's a lot easier to get this to do small amounts, because the lighter you go, the less color you actually want to have come off onto the piece you're working on. Yeah, that's not going to be very good. Well, also make sure that you wash your brushes when they get stiff. It's really hard to dry brush. I'm sure there were those of you who are watching this video who had doubts that this would end up looking quite like rocks. Now, the reason that you do this is because it's too heavy to do actual rocks on a piece of terrain or anything else, because it will break through. And who wants to be carrying something that weighs 20 pounds around with them? Plus, when you're doing it for model trains and whatnot, you don't want to use the actual rocks, because the table is already weighing pretty much around 1,000 pounds because of all the stuff that you've got on it. Every once in a while you want to change direction while you're doing it, otherwise you won't get the texturing, and it'll also smear the paint a little bit more, which is something you really want to have happen, because it blends better that way. A little bit of gray there. Yes, you can go back and paint over a darker color over the top of the lighter, but you end up with a really bright thing when you do that. Okay, last color, and then we will move on to putting the base on. Okay. Now Now when you want to do this as quickly as possible, because when it dries out you end up with this really bright color over the top of a really dark color. That works okay when you're talking about miniatures, but it doesn't make sense when you're talking about terrain pieces. Oh, I love that sound. Also, if you're really wanting realism, you could add a little bit of white with a really fine brush to make it look like there's been birds around. I've actually figured out how to do white and brown at the same time, so I can put that on certain rocks. There's a few of the rocks that some people won't touch because of that. Okay, now that looks good. What?
There you go.
That looks pretty good. And we'll get that out of the way. And clean off our brushes. Okay, this is my case that I usually put the thing in when I'm doing the flooring. It's basically just a carry-out container. It'll come back into frame in a little bit. First, you want to take the glue. Now, I have a tendency to take the lid off because, honestly, it's a little bit easier to get a good solid string when the lid is off. Doesn't matter if it ends up on the rock or not, because if it ends up on the rock and you have a little bit of grass up on the rock, moss. Now, I'm using a big brush that I've used many times to do gluing. In fact, it's almost to the point where I cannot use it anymore. You can see the markings it has caused by its hardness, because you can't wash glue out of a paintbrush, so always use a brush that you are willing to throw away, because if you don't, you're going to end up losing a brush that you like. Yes, I am very messy when doing this, even though I mostly keep it on the board. Every once in a while a little bit will get off, but that's kind of the point, because you want to make sure you can actually cover the entire top. Otherwise, wood and black will show through, which is another reason why you want the black. Okay. Now, this is just standard grass bought at a hobby store. It's used for making display terrain for train sets. Just sprinkle it across the top of the thing that you are working on. Like I said before, don't hesitate to cover everything. I'm probably going to have to spread it around because this is getting a little low. Now this is, I think this is rough turf. Okay, make sure it spreads. Let it sit for a little bit, probably about a minute at the most. You don't really need to do it that long. I usually only do it about a half a minute, so it should be about ready now. You want to have something that will catch the terrain covering, otherwise you will end up with it all over the place and you're wasting it. With this, I can just dump it right back into the can when I'm done. Okay, tap it off, make sure all of that gets off. A little bit of glue will show back through. If you want to take it off the edge, that's fine. I do that a lot. You don't really want it to get mixed in with the stuff that you're planning on keeping, but if it does, you just end up with this little ball that you can say, hey, it's a bush. Alright. And there we go. Now there's one more thing we're going to do, and that will take a bit. Okay. This is feathergrass. So this is stuff that we make. We sell it on our online store that is attached to our Facebook page. I like it to use it for tall grass, and you can cut it back if it's too long, and grab long pieces if you need super long pieces. I think I might cut some of this back because it's a little long on this one. But what we use to make it is normal feathers. I'm not going to show you how we do that because, well, we got to keep some trade secrets. Now, in order to use this, you will probably, this really does not work well with cardboard, due to the fact that on cardboard you can't really drill holes in it. This, well, I'm going to drill a hole right here. Now remember, you don't really need to drill the holes. It's just, it's nice to have a place to put the glue when you're putting these in. Yes, I am working with a not completely dry piece, but you don't want it to be completely dry when you're doing this. Okay, place to put the glue. I'll put it back. Just a little tiny dab, not very much. A little bit with this kind of work goes a long way. Now, you need to use, probably should use tweezers with it. I have done it by hand a few times, but you can work it around so that you've got the clump of tall grass the way you want it, and then grab onto it with the tweezers and then just press it into the glue. And I didn't quite get the hole right. But you let it go and it spreads out like that, and honestly that looks quite good. It looks like tall grass growing between rocks. Well, you can do this in several places. Usually I try to do it where the I've missed previous spots. You want a fairly deep hole and a fairly wide hole. That's why I'm using the larger of my true hand drills. Just blow off the sawdust. And we'll clump again. Yes, you will get glue and you will get things stuck to your hands. This is messy work. If you don't want to get your hands messy, don't attempt it. If you don't mind it, then have fun, because I sure do. Don't have to have them all uniform. In fact, I prefer not to myself. It looks more realistic when you have shorter blades and taller blades mixed together. Little. Sometimes I hate these bottles. A little dab there. Yeah, what I'm calling a little dab, many of you may call a whole big glob, but it's a matter of opinion. Give it a little bit to dry. There you go. And we'll cover up that spot where I missed with the black paint. Now you want to be careful, because if you're cutting too close to the foam, one of these drills will go right into it, and then you'll have to paint again. Which apparently I'm going to have to do a little bit. But like I said, easy enough to do. That's the point of keeping the paint around. This will probably be the last clump I put on this particular piece. It'll also probably be the tallest. It'll have the tallest blades anyways. Alright, a little dab of glue. It's far easier with the tweezers. Like I said, you don't really need to do it. I've done it by hand many times, but the tweezers make life amazingly easy. Now you can do clumps of grass all the way around it. It's not actually needed. Honestly, the piece looked pretty good by itself, but that little bit of tall grass makes it look a little bit more realistic. And a lot of people, you'd be surprised how many people want realistic. Maybe one more spot out in the middle of nowhere where there's no rocks. Right here. That way you guys can get a good view of the size of the hole. Yes, the further you are away from the rocks, the deeper you will want the hole. Cardboard's a lot easier because you can use a toothpick, but it's not really good for this kind of grass. Okay, and we'll just use that little clump right there. Now I'll do this one without the tweezers, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let's see, down into the hole. Spread it out a little bit because the grass in this kind of place will always do that. And I think this piece is done. Okay, that's it for this video. The next one will be walls, which will be fun. Molly will be back in front of the camera for part of that. And as always, check out our Facebook page where I will be posting pictures of the finished rock pieces. And if you like these videos and want to see the production value go up, go to our GoFundMe and Kickstart me's.